Welcome to the program. I'm Okbayemi Owasheni. We start off with business news. The Central Bank of Nigeria, in collaboration with the Nigeria Interbank Settlement System, has launched a non-resident bank verification number platform to ease access to financial services for Nigerians in the diaspora. Unveiled in Abuja, the platform allows Nigerians abroad to obtain their BVN remotely, eliminating the long-standing requirement of physical presence in Nigeria. Speaking at the launch, the governor of the CBN, Olayemi Kadoso, described the NRBVN as a major leap in the Apex Bank's financial inclusion agenda, particularly for Nigerians living outside the country. And Lagos State Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu has called for broader inclusion of micro, small and medium enterprises and high net worth individuals in Nigeria's tax net to address growing tax evasion and boost revenue collection. Sanwo-Olu, represented by Special Advisor on Taxation and Revenue, Ogungbe Abdulkabir Okbayemi, made the call during the opening ceremony of the 27th Annual Tax Conference of the Chartered Institute of Taxation of Nigeria in Abuja. In his goodwill message, the governor pointed to a clause in the new tax reform bills awaiting constitutional approval, which exempt employees earning below 800,000 naira annually from personal income tax as a potential gap that must be tackled. Stay with us after this break as we'll turn our focus to the corporate scene where Premium Trust Bank is expanding its footprint in the south-south part of the country. There are more details after this break. Welcome back. Premium Trust Bank has deepened its presence in Nigeria's south-south region with the commissioning of its 21st branch in Efron, Delta State. The bank, which began operations in 2022, says the move aligns with its mission to drive financial inclusion and support local economies through innovative banking services. There are more details in this report. The newest addition to Premium Trust Bank's growing network was officially unveiled in Efron on Monday, marking its 21st branch nationwide and the second in the Efron axis. The ceremony drew members of the Delta State Executive Council, business leaders, traditional rulers and customers of the bank, all gathered to welcome what many described as a strategic boost to the region's commercial potential. Leading the commissioning was Delta State Governor Sheriff Oborewori. He described the bank's expansion as a strong vote of confidence in Delta's economic climate.
I am upbeat about the prospect this bank has for employment generation. Through this bank, some of our qualified youths will be gainfully employed, either as professionals or non-core banking staff. The same applies to contractors and suppliers who will also enjoy the benefits of bank's presence here. Delta State boasts a wide array of qualified, competent, and promising youths. Appeal to the bank to ensure that a substantial percentage of their workforce are recruited from this area.
For the bank's leadership, this expansion goes beyond just numbers. Managing Director and CEO Emmanuel Emefienim said the Efron branch represents the bank's ongoing mission to build trust, empower families and promote inclusive growth.
This branch is your hub for opportunity, a platform for growth, and a symbol of our shared vision for a brighter future. To our customers, you are the heart of Premium Trust Bank. Your trust inspires us to innovate and deliver services that transform lives. To the state government, we commit to deepening our partnership to unlock economic dividends, promote financial inclusion, and build a state where every Delta can live a better life.
Emefienim also reaffirmed the bank's alignment with Delta State development goals, promising continued support for SMEs, financial inclusion and economic development.
We pledge to continue our partnership with the state to create an environment where businesses thrive, entrepreneurs flourish, and communities prosper. At Premium Trust Bank, trust is our cornerstone. This new branch in Efuru is a promise to the people of this dynamic region, a promise to fuel your ambitions, a promise to empower your businesses.
Other dignitaries present commended the bank's professionalism and swift national expansion.
I'm aware of the tremendous strides this bank has been able to achieve just within 2.5 years. It's only God Almighty that can give you that privilege. We have seen banks coming, we have seen big banks come to you, but you came, you have seen, and you are conquering.
Please, let's patronize our own. Let's all patronize our own, because the best thing to strive between us is to patronize our own. This business will not fail. It will not fail. It will go from strength to strength.
With 3 branches now operating in Delta State and more planned across the region, Premium Trust Bank says it remains committed to powering economic development and building lasting relationships with communities. It's time for a short break now, but when Money Matters return, we'll look at tech disruptor making wave in Nigeria's internet space, Starlink. I'll bring you more details after this break. Welcome back. Now, Elon Musk's satellite internet service, Starlink, is rapidly expanding its footprint across Africa, and Nigeria is no exception. Now operational in 22 African countries, Starlink is designed to bridge connectivity gaps in areas where traditional broadband is limited or unreliable. In Nigeria, it has quickly climbed the ranks to become the second highest internet service provider, raising questions about what's driving the shift. Telecommunication experts say one key reason is Starlink's unique offering reliable internet access through satellite, which is not dependent on the ground infrastructure many rural or underserved areas lack. Users have also praised the speed and stability of the service.
The speed it's okay. Like for me, I think I do get up to 180, 200 of Mbps download speed. Yes, download speed. And about 48, 50 Mbps upload speed. So it's good. It's good for us, yeah.
As Starlink continues to expand, experts believe it could reshape the Nigerian internet landscape by pushing traditional ISPs to improve their offerings. But questions remain about long-term affordability, regulatory hurdles, and how inclusive the service truly is, whether it's a game changer or just a premium option. Now, to discuss this further and answer all of those questions, telecommunications data analyst Sadiq Mohammed now joins me on the program. Thank you for joining me on the program, Mr. Mohammed. Now, how would you describe Starlink's entry into Nigeria's internet space, and what gap do you think it is trying to fill in the current telecommunication landscape?
Okay, so the Starlink's entry, I would say, is nothing short of revolutionary, considering the amount of growth that Starlink has registered from its introduction in January 2023, thereabout, up until now. Starlink has been able to grow from about 0 to 60K users plus. That was as at the last report from the NCC's website on ISPs. So for that gap, I'll describe it as the home broadband gap. Home broadband and fixed wireless access, or fixed access, basically. That's talking about people who use internet in homes and offices, basically non-mobile users. Yet, as we know, the Starlink setup is not a mobile one. So the idea is that it tries to provide fast internet for people at a specific location. And that gap is one that, when I mean that gap, that space is one that is actually growing quite rapidly, particularly from the COVID period, when we had a lot of people who started working from home. And recently, you'd observe that we also have a lot of young content producers, people who put up their content on social media, and they all need fast internet. And most of them do it from the comfort of a studio. And for such a setup, you need a reliable internet connection. So Starlink is basically filling up that gap, and has quickly grown from when it started to the number two ISP in Nigeria currently.
Well, from reports, we've seen that Starlink is now the second highest internet service provider in the country. What do you think is driving this rapid adoption and user interest?
Okay, maybe a couple of things actually. And the first is um, the fact that it works. Just to put it basically, Starlink works. You get so one thing with many local ISPs that operate within that home broadband space is that they've not been able to provide reliable internet connectivity to users. So people generally have issues with speed, the broadband speed. Aside from that, the reliability and availability. Is your connection on 247 whenever you need it? Probably you want to go into a Zoom meeting. Are you able to trust that your internet will be available at that time? Are you sure that there won't be any downtime during your Zoom meeting? So with the way Starlink's technology is and how robust it is, it's able to fill up that need of fast internet that is very reliable. So because it works, that's just one major reason. And then also you can't rule out the Elon Musk factor. Starlink is from SpaceX, and they have this vertical integration where they do the launching of their satellites. So they basically control their system. And when it comes to anything that has to do with Elon Musk, we're talking about very high standards, very high standard technology, basically. So you have that. There's also this mindset that we have, in this part of the world, when it comes to Western technology that works, we trust it. And through that, you get a lot of word of mouth spreading very rapidly, and then people's confidence generally goes up regarding that. Yeah, so I'd say those are maybe two of the major factors. First one being the fact that there's an existing space that is filling up that our local ISPs are not able to provide fill up, and then secondly, of course, the fact that it's from one of the biggest tech moguls, so people tend to trust that a lot.
Now, from a technical standpoint, how does Starlink service compare to traditional ISPs in terms of speed, reliability, and also reach?
Speeds on the downlink. In the early days, we had people who were reporting speeds of over 100, 200 megabits per second. And that's quite some speed. Like you can use it to basically do anything like a regular regular internet user would typically want to do. But because, of course, as more users are coming on board, as with any other wireless technology, the speed will go down. So let's say typically now, your Starlink user will be getting somewhere between 30 to 60, at least from the experiences we have in Nigeria, 30, 60, 70 megabits per second. But that's still very good for your average user, really. And in terms of latency also, it's not bad. Your latency would vary from about, let's say, 30 to 50, 60, 70 milliseconds. And that's also still very okay. When you compare it with our normal wireless technologies with latencies that go above 100 milliseconds, then of course the Starlink experience is much better.
Now, do you think Starlink has been effective in improving internet access in rural or underserved area parts of Nigeria?
Okay, so when you're talking about rural and underserved areas in Nigeria, we also have to consider, okay, just before I answer that directly, let me give a bit of background. Now, if you check Starlink's website, you'd see that it's being marketed for remote areas. Now, remote is a bit different from rural and underserved, but they are the same in the sense that we're talking about outside your regular cities. So for advanced countries where you have a robust internet infrastructure, and you probably have a lot of homes that are connected to fiber, and fiber of course gives you the best experience when it comes to internet. So when you're talking about um, those advanced countries, their um, existing infrastructure in their cities makes Starlink sort of irrelevant considering the cost you get. So typically in those countries, you have Starlink serving the remote areas. There's areas where the existing digital infrastructure in terms of internet has not been able to reach. So Starlink serves as a perfect solution. But now, when you come to Nigeria, the reverse is the case, if I'll put it that way. So now we have cities where even the digital infrastructure we're talking about doesn't fully, in terms of coverage, you have limited coverage. I wouldn't say it doesn't exist. We already have fiber providers in our cities, Lagos, Abuja, Port Harcourt. But in terms of their reach, you probably won't be getting fiber service everywhere. You get, and then that's why Starlink is thriving in those areas. Now, when you talk about our own rural and underserved regions now, the issue with that would be the entry barrier for Starlink. For people in rural and underserved areas, they probably can't afford even your average smartphones, not to start talking about wanting to get Starlink. You get, so that gap is still there, and I don't think it's what Starlink will be able to serve in in terms of how it's built and how it's priced. You get, because our rural and underserved regions are have a different demography altogether. You have people who really can't afford the basic internet, not to now start talking of Starlink. So that is not a gap that Starlink will be able to cover.
Now, let's talk about pricing, which is very important. How competitive or realistic is Starlink's pricing for the average Nigerian user or business?
Okay, so if I'm right, I think the current Starlink currently goes for above 500k, 500,000 naira for the standard kit. And for the monthly subscription, I think they recently said they were going to increase the price to about 57,000 thereabouts. If you're going to look at it in terms of the average Nigerian, the entry barrier, the entry cost is still high. I mean, that barrier is still quite high for the average Nigerian. But this is Nigeria. People would always find one solution or the other. So, based on my research, I've seen cases where people actually rent out the Starlink kit either for different events. You get, so they're also using it as a business. You get, and then there are cases of people reselling. Maybe after obtaining the kit from the official channels, they tend to resell. They have different business models, basically, just trying to find a solution. And outside of that, you have people who, because of the fact that they need very good internet to be able to run their business, of course, they would go over the top to try to get a Starlink kit because it works. It solves a major problem. So for businesses, yeah, the cost might be a bit high initially, but over time, based on the fact that it works and they're able to get their returns, particularly if their business is based on is highly reliant on the internet, you get, and they're able to um, pay for it eventually. And like I said earlier, you have third-party sellers that have different payment solutions, either by renting or by allowing for maybe subscription-based, not subscription-based now, by allowing for part payments. You get, so somewhere people are able to meet in the middle, just to make sure that they get the solution.
But what challenges, regulatory or infrastructural, do you think Starlink might face operating in Nigeria in the long run?
Okay, in terms of regulatory, well, maybe not so much. They have a license they've signed with NCC, as it were. But I know there are other NCC regulations, things around customer service outlets, the availability of customer service outlets, um, user experience, and maybe a number of other um, regulations. Now, for the user experience, well, I wouldn't say I'm entirely sure whether this applies to only local ISPs or for every other ISP that operates in Nigeria. But even if it were to apply to other ISPs that are not necessarily based in Nigeria, I'll say Starlink scales that bar in terms of the user experience. Yeah, because it's able to offer something that is even better than what the local providers are able to give. Now, in terms of customer service, I don't know of any physical official Starlink outlets that exist within Nigeria, because I know that NCC has a rule. I can't remember specifically something around about having an accessible customer service point within a certain distance from where you operate. I can't remember the specifics now, but I know maybe I'm not sure if that is something NCC is looking at, or whether um, it's something that directly applies to them. You get, but I know they don't have any physical outlets here in Nigeria. Usually, when you need to contact them, you do that through customer support, where they get to respond to you maybe after a couple of hours or after a couple of days, as the case may be. And aside from that, in terms of other regulations, yeah, I remember. I don't know if you remember this tussle that occurred a couple of months back, where Starlink increased their pricing, and because there was still this ongoing discussion with the local ISPs and mobile network operators regarding the tariff increase, which eventually happened. So when Starlink went ahead to increase their price, there was this outrage from the local guys. Why are you allowing the foreign guys to increase their price, and then the local guys are not? You're still having discussions. You've been pushing back. So eventually, NCC had to clamp down on that and asked Starlink to push back on that price increase. So I think there was a recent price increase they've announced, but that's more in line with the 50% tariff increase, which has been made official. So, yeah, that's mostly about it regarding regulatory issues that may come up.
But Mr. Mohammed, I would like you to also speak on the infrastructural challenges you think Starlink might face in the long run.
Well, I don't think, because of the way the technology is, I don't think there will be much of any. Like I said, it's satellite based. So you're talking about constellations, low Earth orbit constellations that are not geographically tied to any point, as it were. So aside from that, I know there needs to have an internet exchange point. They need to connect to Nigeria's official internet exchange point for in order to operate properly. So I that has been done. I can't remember how many. Okay, so aside from that, um, to improve the latency on their network, they usually require needs to have a gateway located within the country they operate in. Of course, it depends on the geographical size of the country, but considering that Nigeria is quite a big country relatively, I know when they started, they had their gateway somewhere in Lagos. I can't remember. I think they have another one now. Probably I can't remember if it's in Abuja or Port Harcourt. You get, but the gateway, as it were, is just a large antenna or a large array of antennas. I think about 6 antennas per site. So in terms of infrastructure, that is not so much of um, how do I put it? It's not so much of a requirement. It's something that can be done very quickly from Starlink's end. I mean, in terms of installing their gateway. Aside from that, that's the only yeah, and then they require a physical connection to Nigeria's internet exchange point. Aside from that, they really don't have any other infrastructural challenges. Like I mentioned earlier, they use their systems are quite integrated vertically. What that means is that they produce their own satellites. They have the spaceships that launch it into space. So they control their processes, and they are not really tied to the regulations of any country, as it were. So they control their processes. Their infrastructure is managed by them. So unlike our local ISPs, where there are a lot of issues around tower ownership, around where they can actually locate their sites. So they don't get to face all of those typical infrastructural challenges that our local ISPs would typically face.
Do you think Starlink poses a serious threat or healthy competition to Nigeria's existing telecom providers?
I would say both. It's produces a threat. It presents itself as a threat, really, because when you look at market penetration, according to the data we have from NCC, they are currently number 2, like you said. Now, consider the time it took them to achieve that, just barely 2 years plus, and they've sprung to number 2. Now, imagine all of the ISPs that they've had to topple to get to that point. And then when you talk about the financial strength of SpaceX, that's Starlink, Elon Musk, very few, is one of the richest men in the world. Very few ISPs can compete at that level. So definitely, in terms of being a threat, they are quite a visible one. But it also presents healthy competition, because what Starlink has been able to show is that there's a vibrant market that is willing to pay for a service that works. So if other ISPs are able to get their game right, for instance, one viable solution would be 5G fixed wireless access, and that can provide speeds that are comparable, if not better than Starlink. But of course, there are a whole lot of issues around that, talking about the economic considerations now, talking about whether our mobile network operators are able to invest in 5G. Because as it is now, 5G demand is very low in Nigeria. A whole lot of factors around that as well. But if they're able to get their act right and put their game together, Starlink has shown that there's a market, and there definitely can be some healthy competition in that regard.
Well, just before I let you go, looking ahead, what role do you see satellite internet services like Starlink playing in shaping Nigeria's digital future?
Okay, in shaping Nigeria's digital future. Yeah, so satellite technology, we could look at it from the sense of a fixed solution, talking about providing internet for home broadband, talking about providing internet for office locations. Yeah, so in as much as Starlink is able to keep up with the current experience, yeah, what we are going to have is definitely a rapid growth in terms of digital inclusivity in Nigeria. We have a lot of people that are able to access the internet reliably. As you know, a lot of businesses now run on the internet. It's very difficult not to be globally connected to remain relevant in whatever business, whatever. And it's not just business. We could talk about telemedicine, online medicine sessions. You could talk about online education. So it spreads across quite a number of different spectrum. And all of these services, all of these different services basically require very good internet. And Starlink is able to fill up that gap. So yeah, Starlink has a very huge role to play in terms of Nigeria's digital development.
Well, telecommunications data analyst Sadiq Mohammed, many thanks for lending your thoughts on the program. And that's it for this episode of the program. Many thanks for joining us. I'm Okpeyemi Owusheni. See you next time.